The temperature and the snow is falling. Picture yourself out in these conditions with no place to go. You're cold, hungry, and homeless.
That would be the last thing that I would want, is to have to go through winter homeless.
The last thing you would want because Robertson learned what it's like as a 5th grader in Indiana.
10 years old was that like walking off the cliff moment. That was like the point where you just couldn't go back. You know, poverty became a real issue. It was just so clear that everything could just fall apart at any moment.
And it falls apart too for people here in Vermont.
Homelessness is a huge issue in the Northeast Kingdom.
I know of homeless families that our children were sleeping in tents, and it's rough, but.
Dan Hancock, a community engagement specialist from Moral Edge here in Lindenville, says that Vermont has what is known as hidden homelessness. And what that means is that homeless individuals are found sleeping in ATM booths or vacant buildings.
39% of the population of homelessness are under the age of 18. You know, since 2013, our homeless population has doubled in the state of Vermont.
It's hard for people to understand just how helpless you feel when you end up homeless. And it's hard to be proud when you're living on the street.
Klepper no longer lives on this street, but those who do can find a temporary home when the temperature drops thanks to a state program.
Economic Services right now does cold exception housing, so if it's below a certain temperature, they can put them up for the evening.
What it turns out is often the state has to turn to motels because there's nothing else available.
And even some empty rooms are not available.
Not everybody wants to rent to them, and there is the lack of housing, especially if we're facing really bad budget problems.
So all around the state, we've been scrambling to help people when they're timing out of motels find a permanent place to live someplace else.
That's someplace else after the motel and before a permanent home can be a homeless shelter.
But the problem really in the Northeast Kingdom is we don't have any shelters.
We need more of those creative options.
Homeless advocates believe that more shelters in the area would be a big help and would cost less than temporary lodging.
Those people used to either be out on the streets or in hotel rooms.
It would be saving the state dollars if we could get a shelter open.
Currently, there are only 5 shelters in Vermont. 8 out of 14 counties have no shelters. Advocates say the temporary refuge of a shelter helps homeless people focus on a more permanent housing solution.
You can't focus on those things when you don't know where you're going to rest your head that night. When you have that sort of instability, it really eats at you.
Last year, 1,556 people in Vermont were counted as homeless. Reporting for the Vermont Center for Community Journalism, I'm Katrina Florenza.